Yeah.
Oftentimes we've abdicated that responsibility to the banking institutions because that's what we've been taught. We didn't know that there was any other difference.
Yeah.
It means we deposit money in there and they borrow our deposits and lend it out, sometimes back to us, and they make a good living doing it. We need to be the financial engine of our life.
All right, guys, welcome back to the High Voltage Business Builders podcast. I'm going to let that play in the background. I'm going to send you a copy so everybody can jam out on Russ the Idea Guy. It's an AI-driven song that I created for you. And it just talks about how awesome you are. So we're going to let that run in the background. But hey, listen, I have a super cool guest today. Someone who has been involved in building passive income, who got started in this game a long time ago, with the help of his mother and things we're going to talk about today. And just the building of passive income and wealth and creation, getting out of the 9-to-5 lifeline and building an opportunity to retire early so you don't have to spend 20, 30 years doing it. This is the guy we're going to talk to today, Russ the Idea Guy. Russ, thanks for coming in, man.
Neil, man, it's always a pleasure. And now you have an AI song for me?
Dude.
Wow.
It's your deal, man. It's your jam.
That's hard to beat, man.
We're going to flip that one over. You can play that live on your next event. So what have you been up to, my friend, since we last chatted?
Well, we released a book, Neil. Can you believe that?
That's big.
Wealth Wall Street, 3 Steps to Freedom Through Passive Income. That's been pretty cool. We've been working on that for a long time and excited for that to finally be live.
That is very cool. I saw that come out and it's on Amazon. So guys, go check that out. Just type in Wealth Without Wall Street and you will find their book. I highly recommend you do. It's highly rated and it's running the charts, which is amazing. So congratulations. That's a big effort to get something like that in the marketplace. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah. So it definitely a labor of love.
Well, it always is a labor of love. So the thing we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to speak some personal experience because I've actually been inside your guys' group and been around you for years and actually taken and applied in my own personal testimony here, activities of your teachings into practice, and have just purchased my first passive income asset outside of what I normally do in Voltage. I have another thing that I've actually done through my own personal family office now that's outside of the banking institution, and used it to leverage into a little business. It's cash flowing about $3,000 a month and plan to turn that into 6, 9, 12 grand a month. And then maybe I'll flip it off. Maybe I'll hang on to it. Maybe I'll let it just continue to do what you teach. So for those who are listening and maybe wondering how I did that, what I did and what started that, Russ, take us back for a second into what does this actually look like to cash flow businesses and even create passive income?
Yeah, I think so oftentimes, I think we're taught that the typical method for financial freedom is when I have 7 or 8 figures in some account. And most of us have been taught that's in like some sort of retirement account, like a 401k or IRA at a company. And that's a hard task to actually accomplish. If you do the math on it, they say that you can take out 3 to 4% of whatever amount of money you have. So you try to do how much, if I had $1 million, that means I could take out $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Well, if I'm making out $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year, that means I have to get $4 million in that account. Man, that's going to be a lot at 3%. I mean, and everybody's looking at where they are and they go, how long will it take me to accumulate that much money? Mm-hmm. And for most people, it's past their life expectancy.
Yeah.
And what I learned this is that passive income greater than monthly expenses is actually financial freedom. Because once we have money that we don't have to go to necessarily work for is coming in on a recurring basis, if it exceeds what we spend on a monthly basis, now we're financially free. And I've seen people, as you have, in the stuff that you guys do, be able to get to that point in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, a fraction of the amount of time it takes. So for us, it's about learning who you are as an investor. We call that investor DNA, building a buy box around that, and then running toward that exact formula with that in mind, measuring everything against it, that being the framework. Is it getting me closer to that or is it getting me further from? It makes financial decision-making so much easier.
Yeah, man, let's break into that a little bit, unpack that just a little bit. But for those who might have been like me once upon a time in the corporate world, I was an IBM grinding and thinking I need to keep lifting up, keep going faster, take the next job, takes the next level, get to the next whatever it was. And instead, I should have just hired a mentor sooner than later and actually got out there and did this for real. Because if I think back and I plan forward, I was going to be like 97, which meant I would have retired for all of about 11 minutes before I died. I think that's like the average feeling from today's thought process. So if I have a job, if I've got income coming, if I got a business that's cash flowing, where do I start? Like, how do I even get the first step off the ground of pulling something that you said 3 to 5 years, passive income above financial expenses? How do I even start the process?
Yeah. So we actually wrote our book around that exact thing. It was built upon the 3 steps, which were GPS. And most of us use GPS in our life on a regular basis to travel from wherever we are to wherever we're going. And we wanted that to be applicable to our situation. So one, you have to have a goal, right? So Dale, the easiest thing for someone who's listening right now to say is to write down how much money are they actually spending on a monthly basis. And I would say most of the people listening don't know that number. We just don't. We know how much money we make. We know there's not a whole lot of money left over, but we don't know specifically how much. I would say that'd be the first objective for you as you're listening, is to know exactly how much money you're spending. Because once you know that, then you know what your hurdle is. Now get on the same page with whoever is going to be your partner in this. Hopefully it's a spouse or somebody that is going to help drive you toward that objective. And some people need a coach, right? Like I know in Voltage, you guys coach people on how to build e-commerce brands because it's not something they've been taught their whole life. Most of the people need a coach. So we actually have built a whole process around teaching people that. But in that coaching process what they're learning is what is that pathway to getting there? And so first thing is to get money going towards you instead of away from you. So most of the people that are putting money into qualified plans, they realize it's not getting them closer to, so they'll free up cash. They'll find ways and places to put that cash. That's a big, huge key. I think the number one thing to keeping people from becoming financially free, Neil, is that they don't have access to cash. Yeah. So we talk about that in great detail. The second thing is that once they know that, all right, now I've got access to my cash. Now, how do I start investing it? You just don't invest based upon what Neil's doing and working or what Russ is doing and working. You have to figure out what works for you. And we call that investor DNA. And once we have an assessment people go through, it helps them narrow down the path from 1,000 different ideas to one or two ideas that actually mirror and match your own personality traits and your skill sets and the resources you have. And that allows you to then go do training or investments, depending on what those specific things are. And now you can build a buy box around that, meaning you can actually determine what is it that you specifically want out of that investment. And for some people, it's immediate cash flow. For some people, they need tax benefits. For some people, they need some equity on the back end, whatever it is, right? Involvement of their time. And then they can support themselves with other ideas and other strategies. But I know I just took 10 years worth of information, by the way, and dumped it down into a couple of minutes.
I got all of it. Almost.
But where do I start?
Yeah.
I mean, the number one start is you just have to have a goal. You have to have a vision for what it looks like. And then you have to just surround yourself with people that are thinking the same way and if you need support, you need coaching, find somebody or a company that can help you do that.
At typically, what stage in life do you find people that really resonate with this conversation? Are they the newer 20, 30-year-olds just getting off the ground, building a house, building family, building life? Or are they the 40, 50 and older in the boomer stages of life? Or who do you really say that resonates with this concept of cash to income to passive income opportunities?
Yeah, I will say that the ages can vary a little bit, but here's what it sounds like. I've tried it a certain way for a certain period of time, and I've reached the level of frustration, right? For somebody who's been working 10 or 15 years, at least usually is when they start thinking, man, I'm hitting a roadblock, an obstacle. I'm not getting any closer to what I want in life. Usually their kids are starting to grow a little bit older. They're seeing things that they're not able to do that they wanted to do. They're seeing people that are 10 or 15 years ahead of them in the workforce. And they're like, that person isn't where I want to be.
Yeah.
That's usually where people come to us. Now, it usually happens in that phase. And so we have people that have come to us in their 20s, and it's like, man, they saw someone that was 20 and 30 years older than them. And they're like, I don't want that. I mean, I can think of an attorney that came to us. He was working 40, 50 hours in the firm. He wasn't at a partner level yet, but he was watching what the partners were doing. And the only way he can make more money is if he just build more hours.
Yeah.
Well, building more hours equal less time at home. And he was at the process about to start a family. Yeah. And he was like, I don't want that. And so it was like, oh, well, if I don't want that, how do I fix it? And I could think about people that are in their 60s that are saying, I've worked my whole life doing this and I don't feel like I'm any closer to retirement. And how can I get to where I can live this out? And then they start looking backwards and thinking about their kids and their grandkids and say, man, can I learn this now at 60 or 65 and start teaching my kids and my grandkids this? So there is a span, but usually it's a frustration point of what they've been trying is not working. And Neil, I used to go up to the medical schools, the dental schools, and I would talk to these individuals and I would say, man, here's what's coming up in life, man. Let me show you a pathway out of there. And I would be so frustrated. I'd leave there dejected with how many people were not interested. They were just not excited about it because they were so ready to go out and conquer the world because they've been studying forever. Yeah. So that's why usually it's 10 or 15 years after
some kind of life change. Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, being a doctor isn't what I thought it was going to be. I may make more money per hour, but it's still about how many hours I put in.
That story resonates with me because it's kind of mine. I mean, a little epiphany moment. I was on the end of a project wrapping up. I was about 30 years old. I'm sitting around the table with about 20 of these other consultants and had just finished this project for multi-years. And we've been traveling all over the place. IBM used to be called I've Been Moved. So we were like moved 2 to 3 times a week. It got to be a joke that, getting on the bus was like getting on a plane. And it was like the cows and the chickens and everything are hanging off the side. And it's like this, just getting on this bus all the time. And I'm sitting around this table and there's like these 50 something guys at that point, which sounds really weird now because I'm closing in on 50. And like, I'm looking at these guys going, I don't want to be you by the time I'm 50. I listened to them and they were lamenting and like going on to the next project and how they didn't spend time with their families and they were on the phone and some of them were talking to their kids. And it was just like listening to that was just a moment of epiphany. I'm like, I can't do this the rest of my life. Like I have to change something. Something has to stop. I can't quit anymore. And I think that's a catalyst I've heard. I heard it in the story you just said, but I've heard it in your other backgrounds in life, and I understand the concept. But what is the vehicle that drives that? I mean, e-commerce, of course, is one side of how to implement and execute a plan that's going forward. But there's something you call the IBC. Can you unpack that all real quick and what that actually means?
Well, real quick, it's going to be hard. My mentor, Nelson Nash, he wrote this book called Becoming Your Own Banker, where he revealed this idea of this infinite banking concept. He would often say this, Neil, is that he would be giving typically around the country over a year, he'd give 50 10-hour workshops on this concept. And he would be asked that question like, hey, Nelson, would you mind just sharing over a couple of minutes what IBC is?
A couple minutes. Well, 10 hours later.
No, I mean, he's normally given a 10-hour workshop, right, but he's asked in an environment like this where he has a couple of minutes. Hey, do you mind summarizing? And he would say, well, it's sort of like a mosquito in a nudist colony. I know what to do. I just don't know where to start.
Oh, wait, I thought you said I know what to do. You said I know what to do, right? Okay,
I know what to do, but I don't know where to start. So from this perspective, like the infinite banking concept is really an idea that we have to recognize our money has a cost. And that doesn't matter. Like everything that we're going to buy, we're going to finance. And it doesn't matter if we're going to borrow money from someone else and pay them interest, or we're going to pay cash and lose the ability to earn interest on our capital. The other idea is that we need to be the financial engine of our life.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we've abdicated that responsibility to the banking institutions because that's what we've been taught. We didn't know that there was any other difference.
Yeah.
It means we deposit money in there and they borrow our deposits and lend it out, sometimes back to us, and they make a good living doing it. And what the infinite banking concept just lets people understand is that you can actually perform that function for your life, for your family, and you can utilize your own deposits and put it to work on your behalf.
Yeah.
While continuing to earn interest on your dollars instead of giving up that interest like normally when we use checking accounts.
That was a big thing for me to realize that simple little concept of cash flowing someone else's business or opportunity instead of keeping the cash and cash flowing my own. Just that one little thing for me was like a duh moment because my parents all did everything with cash. Cash in the barrel, pay for cash, pay for your cars for cash, pay for everything for cash. And so what you're actually talking about in some ways is leveraging debt responsibly.
Well, it's about putting yourself in a position where you can. I mean, the word debt sometimes is a triggering word for people, right? Like hey, in the Bible, it says that the debtor is a slave to the lender. So we don't want to be in debt. If we follow Dave Ramsey, we're like, I want to be debt free. Yes. The concept of the American dream of having my house paid off. So debt sometimes is very emotionally charged. And I think people make bad financial decisions based upon that.
Yeah.
If we're going to invest in ourselves, and our financial IQ, we will realize that we can utilize debt in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, we can use it in a very negative way. The tool that we actually use, Neil, is what all of these big institutions and banks are using, which is a specifically designed insurance contract. And so I'm not unique in this, and nor was Nelson Nash in writing that book, Becoming Your Own Banker. All he did was look around, took a view of the landscape and realized that the largest corporations, the banking institutions, we're putting billions of dollars in whole life insurance and utilizing the safety net within it, the the guaranteed growth within it, the tax benefits of it that was already afforded to it because it existed well before the IRS code was even created.
Even the bank.
And then leveraging that cash to go invest in things that they knew how to do. And so when I take a loan against my life insurance policy, or you take a loan against yours, we're actually not going into debt. All we're doing is reducing the death benefit, this insurance contract's death benefit against the cash value that we have. And that's contractually that they give us access to that. And the beauty is we don't have to do all this paperwork and stuff. We don't have to prove we can pay it back. And we get to put money into motion. And we've evaluated what wealthy people do, and that they get money flowing to them. Right? As poor and broke people, they have money going away from them. So this concept,
table on that whole concept just recently, and it was on an entrepreneurial site. I'll have to get the link and put it out here. Forget exactly where that was, but the simple concept you saying was that most 8-9 figure millionaires and billionaires, 90% of all their worth is in their business. So it's all cash flowing through the business. Everyone else's assets are in their cars, house, 401ks, and bank accounts. So if you really want to understand what Russ is saying, go check that out, guys. It is literally just a recent survey that proves that if you want to become rich, which I think anybody listening to this call through some mechanism, some vehicle, e-commerce or otherwise, real estate or development or land flipping or whatever, you want to cash flow your life. You want to create more time with your family. You want to buy back time with your family. And this mechanism is why I found it so fascinating. As you said, you cash flow your own life, but you keep the cash with you. So technically, it's not debt. It's a very fascinating concept once you finally grapple it. But if I'm not rich yet, and I want to get going, but I have cash flow, how much do I need to put in? How much would I put in? How much could I put in if I'm getting off the ground? Is there like a minimum? Is there a maximum? Is there what's the boundary?
One is really difficult to give specifics on a podcast like this, but I'll give you some boundaries around this. One, the insurance companies do have a limit of how much insurance death benefit you can buy on your own life. And most of us have never even thought that was possible, but there is a limit. And if you follow this process far enough and implement it like we have, you will reach those limits. But most people starting out will never reach those limits. So it usually starts out with the cash flow that they have. They've figured out what their expenses are. They have a delta between what they're bringing in and what they're spending. And that excess has to go somewhere, and they flow it into the system. And this system now is the holder of that cash, where maybe before it was going toward IRAs, it was going to 529 plans and toward investments, sitting in checking accounts, right? They've now centralized it into a place they can have. There's a few people out there who already have been sitting up, putting cash, whether in their business and retained earnings. If they've got savings accounts off to the side, maybe they just sold a piece of real estate or a business, they've got cash and they want to funnel a bunch of it in there. They can do that too. So the minimum is subject to your health, your age, and the funding. I've seen people start insurance policies on kids and put a couple $100s a month in. We've got clients that are in our system that are business owners, very successful, putting several $1 million a year in. So it's all across the board. Yeah. Each person is doing it uniquely. At the end game, it's ultimately what you put in, you ultimately get a percentage of that access in year one, in which you can start implementing. Yeah. For depending on who you are, what that is, then what you can buy with it is relative to the cash value that you have.
So if you really want to know about you personally, listening to this right to now, you want to go over to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/high voltage. That's /high voltage. Get the DNA and the investor DNA profile. Go have a free discovery call and discover what it is in your current position, whether you're a high income earning professional or somebody who's just working and wants to get away from the 9-to-5 grind, or maybe you're even a business development real estate guru who wants to leverage tax-free and go out a little more and leverage your cash flow. That's for you guys. And also grab a copy of their book while you're over there, The 3 Steps to Becoming Financially Free. You guys definitely want to check that out. So Russ, question for you, back out of the weeds just for a second. Is there something I haven't asked you yet on this call? Maybe something, let me rephrase that. Is there something that you're bullish about this year? Something that you really feel strongly about in 2024 as you're looking forward?
Well, great question, but it's a typical question. I will not answer that. And here's why, because what I could be bullish about, Neil, would not apply to the person. If you go to our website, Wealth Without Wall Street, you can see every single month we post our personal passive income report. Yeah. And we've been doing this now for almost 4 years. And we share every single month what we're investing in and what the result is, right? And we've invested in pretty much almost every asset class I can think of.
On everything.
And I hear ideas. I just got off a call in one of our masterminds, and the guy was talking about small cabins you could put on remote areas that can even be moved. You could even put it on other people's land, not even your land. And I like my eyes get big. Like I see opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
What I'm bullish on is being out there seeing deals, right? The more opportunity you have, the more opportunity there are for you. If you don't have options, you have no options. So I think for every person listening is that if you haven't been in an environment, you got to get out there and start getting in the environment. You need to tell people when you meet with people that I'm an investor. And they're going to say, well, what sort of investments? What sort of investments are you involved in? Like, I want to tell people, like, I want to get deals coming to me, because when I tell the world this, then I'm going to start seeing those deals. They're going to start coming to me, and there's going to be opportunities. Now, you need to vet probably 100 deals before you invest in one.
At least.
And for most people, they just haven't been exposed to that way because they've advocated that responsibility.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm bullish on everything.
You're in abundance for 2024.
But also, I personally, for my own investor DNA, I don't invest in anything that doesn't have an operator in it. I realize what my gift is: bringing ideas, bringing marketing, bringing management, but is not doing operations, not being an integrator. So I figured that out about myself. Like I can get access to capital really easy, but I don't have access to the time to do it. And I don't want to have to do it. So I'm always looking for somebody in that world. So if you bring me a business, I'm going to look at its opportunity to grow. And I'm going to see, can I put an operator, or is there already existing operator in space that I can execute? And
that's just moving through the quadrants. I mean, if you're going through the quadrant of self-employed to business owner or entrepreneur and on the path of business owner, eventually we lead towards investors. And so I think very similar to you, is there a business situation where I can put operators in place now where I'm no longer just, I used to be at the tactical level. I used to be in the shovels and the trenches, but that's really not where I'm good at anymore. It's not my bent. Ultimately, I can do it, but it's not where I'm focused. And I think a lot of people on here would like to get there. They just have to realize you've got to kind of walk before you can run. And some of the strategies you're talking about today are how to walk to learning what it is you can actually run at. I'm much better at organizing and facilitating, as you are, than I am just at the tactical operations. So,
well, and I think for me, I'm at a point where my oldest is 18, Neil, and she's getting ready to go off to school because she wanted to swim in college. That's her objective.
Very cool.
And I'm like investing as much time as I can into her and my 16-year-old, my 14-year-old, into trying to help them find a business that they can invest in and grow as they're going through school. Because teaching them about how money works is way more important. Because if they can grasp this at this level, I didn't learn this until I was in my 30s. And the typical financial markets did not teach me the things that we've learned over the last 10 years. It was actually personal development and just being out there doing it.
How much was your mother involved in that? You mentioned this in the past, and you mentioned the struggle with that. Like in my house, for example, dad being a hard worker, blue collar, 30 years at the same job. Money in our house is a 4-letter word. You literally didn't ask for money. You didn't talk about money. You didn't complain about money. Money just didn't get talked about. Is that similar to your background at all in the way that you were raised?
Yeah. I mean, my mom was a school teacher. My dad was a contractor, and there was not a whole lot of money. It was for my dad. When he wanted to make money, he just went out and did another job, let somebody know he was available. For my mom, she spent way more money. Oftentimes she would actually freeze credit cards and Tupperware dishes to try to prevent herself from spending money.
That's a new one.
And so, I mean, like, but it was always, I could just remember in high school, like if I wanted to go on a trip with my friends, that I would just say, okay, I'm going. Then I'd go to my dad and say, hey, what can I do for you and for how long in order to make this amount of money? And so it was always like, how can I create value to do it? But it wasn't until later in life, until I realized that you didn't have to trade time for money, that there was ways to get money to work for you, right? Like that's that I quadrant, right? Is when the people in the I quadrant have money making money for them. And I was working hard for money for so long in that S quadrant that it's just
burns you out.
Looking at deals, the more you learn, the more you start to find opportunities. And it's like, man, if I could just go back in time.
Yeah, right. Of course, then you wouldn't be here and all the great things, and you would have changed so much. I think about that question. I'm like, no, I tell that 18-year-old kid, just keep going. You're going to like how it turns out. Hopefully you did too. Well, look, guys, go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/high voltage. Check all the resources, information. There's a couple of events coming up too. There is a passive income retreat for those of you who maybe are higher income earners and already involved in, some capacity of business and finances and want to, mingle with others who are already building passive income and lifestyles. Definitely check out that retreat that's coming up here shortly. And then there's another retreat coming up for beginners. If you're new and you're interested in this concept and you want to meet Russ and meet his team and learn about what's going on, there's an event coming up shortly for that as well. Check out the show notes below for the date and time and everything in regards to that. So you'll want to check that out. There's a live event for you on either particular path that you're walking. Final thoughts, Russ, on this thing? I got a question for you. If there was somebody I could introduce you to that you have never met before, let's say it was in my power to introduce you and you could sit down and have lunch with them and talk or whatever, who would it be? Who would that person be?
Man, what a great question. I think that there's a lot of former economists, the Austrian economists out there that come to mind. To be honest, I would like to just go back and spend more time with my mentor, Nelson Nash. He passed away, I don't know, is it 5 years ago now? Mm-hmm. And I had 10 years that I got to spend with him. And to be honest, I'd like to just go back and have more of those conversations because I didn't appreciate every moment that I had because he had so much insight and wisdom. So if you could line that up, that would be the person I would love to have more of those conversations.
6 feet of separation, you never know.
Yeah.
That one might be a tough. Russ, thanks so much for showing up, brother, and just sharing the good news and having some fun with me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Let's tap it out here.